A little over a year ago, the CEO of General Motors proudly announced we're going all EV by 2035. Well, apparently at this very same company, there is a small group of people that would be best described as a skunk works, and they said, I think not. You see, what they did is take the concept, the shape of a vehicle that people no longer buy, and invest their minuscule budget into creating the anti-EV. So what you and I are going to do today is try to understand what they have created for the car freaks in all of us. Okay, so what exactly is the anti-EV? Well, it starts life as a Cadillac CT5V, but they rip out that turbocharged V6 and just completely throw it away, and then instead they drop in a hand-built 6.2-liter V8 that is not turbocharged, it is supercharged. Now, before we talk about the output, remember like the E63? That's a measly, what, 623 horsepower? Then there's the M5. I think the basic one is 600 horsepower. This, 668 horsepower. To me, that sounds awfully close to 700. Then there's the torque, 659 pound-feet of torque. Then there's how it's built. We said handmade. Remember that skunk works we talked about inside of General Motors? Well, this one is made by a woman that goes by the name of Latrice Carruthers. So a huge thank you to Latrice for making us a hand-built engine. Then there's the concept of when you put this kind of power in a vehicle that frankly is meant for about 300 horsepower, even one this size, you need to make a lot of changes to support that kind of power. There's obviously this brace here that goes from strut tower to strut tower, but there's other changes we don't see. Like, for example, there's an electronic limited slip differential in the back that's more than just the system like they have in the M5. Here, it can be programmed on the steering wheel for different driving conditions, like, for example, wet or dry. Then the brakes have to change, obviously. In the front, it's 15.67-inch diameter rotors, 14.7 in the back. Then there's the transmission. Yeah, one can have a 10-speed automatic torque converter like we've seen in other General Motors products that probably works pretty well. But remember, we said this is the anti-EV. So this one has a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, just for kind of grins and giggles, fuel economy, 13, 21, 15 combined. If it was the automatic, it would be 22 on the highway. Then there's the wheels that kind of go with this thing. It's only on offer in 19-inch wheels. 0 to 60 in the automatic, 3.4 seconds. In the manual, 3.6 seconds. Me personally, I don't think I'd really be fussed by the difference for the third pedal. And then there is the VMAX, 200 miles an hour. Why, yes, this is indeed bigger than the last Blackwing manual you and I had on this very same road, which does impact the mass. 4,123 pounds, or depending on express your weights and measures, 1,870 kilograms. Now, if this were an automatic, it would be 20 pounds heavier with that. Oh, yes, that is. I'm sorry, almost 700 horsepower's gotta put a smile on your face. And this, the way it delivers power is indeed different than that last Blackwing. Frankly, other big V8 twin turbos, because after all, this ain't two turbos, and it just sounds magnificent. This, it's got more, there's more noticeable torque to this than other big V8 equations like this. It's got more torque for days. I think that's the best way to describe it. And then there's the transmission itself. This, again, happy to report that this is not just a manual transmission that has been mated to something that frankly doesn't exist anymore. It's a good manual transmission. The throws are kind of perfect for this kind of an engine. Then we need to press on to what's underneath the vehicle, and here are some surprises, some items we expected. Let's start with the surprises. Up front, McPherson strut. I would expect in a vehicle like this, that really the mission of it being a weapon, I'd want some double wishbones. I know that would be expensive, but this is not a cheap derivation of the CT5V. Then in the back, it's a 5-link unit, so that we kind of expect. And then another thing we would expect would be the magnetic ride control. And now the thing that really stands out about that magnetic ride control is the size of the vehicle. So the wheelbase, 116 inches, not exactly a whole hell of a lot different from, say, like an M5 or an E-Class. But here it's where that 116 is. It's more behind the driver's seat. So I can feel the weight back there than here, more so than in other equations like this. Remember, this is kind of the heaviest CT5V out there, so we've got to mitigate that weight a little bit. And here it's good, but it's not as good as I expected. I'd expect maybe like another level of magnetic ride programming where it gets even a bit stiffer. Call me a freak that likes British cars or even some of those like JDM cars where they're so stiff. That's what I'd like to see here to mitigate that extra weight. And then there's the steering, and I would file this also under the heading of surprises. I expected a little bit more weight to the steering. There's good feedback, it's direct, it works with the overall package, but it's not quite the level that I would want. I'd want a little bit more weight in this faster, different flavor of CT5V. And then there's the brakes, and here a little bit of a surprise again, highly unusual for a vehicle that is 4,200 pounds. I've been pushing this thing all afternoon. I'm not feeling much fade, but more importantly, it works. It works with a very fast, very large vehicle. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, something that comes to us directly from the rebellion within General Motors, otherwise known as the 2022 Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. That last word, incredibly important to this vehicle, for a base price of $83,995. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, the last CT5V that we drove with the V6, that one was about 60 grand with a lot of stuff in it. To that, we add the Shadow Metallic. This is a dark gray metallic, not good on this car and not worth the $615. Now, I will admit, Kumo and I have been doing a lot of research on the market of these vehicles. And in speaking to a number of dealers, they're saying that the most popular colors, believe it or not, is black on black and then white on black. Both colors terrible for this vehicle. One needs something that pops. There, of course, is a Gulf livery blue, which is pretty cool. As a matter of fact, there's another car in the California fleet that we tried to get because it had that color, but sadly it was booked. And then there's an infrared, like tin coat. It's like a burgundy metallic. It's not like the red one that we drove. It's kind of like a flat red. This one, it just comes off the page. But again, in speaking to the different dealers that are trying to sell these cars, they stopped making the red for 2022. You can't get it anymore, and they're hoping they do it again in 2023. If one were to get the red, it'd be about $1,200. Then this one has the jet black interior. Again, not attractive. This needs something that has a contrast. Sadly, that is not on offer in a CT5V Blackwing. One can have either all black like this, or black and gray, or black and tan, and it's less tan than what we saw in the CT4V Blackwing. It's just the top of the seats, and then believe it or not, the seat belts come as tan, which is a nice touch. There is an option for a red seat belt here, but you can't have it with the black and tan interior. You can only have it with the all black interior. Just, this needs a lot more work on the color and trim to make this vehicle pop. I would argue it's either that Gulf livery blue or the red with the black and tan interior in either case. Then we press on to the seats that are in semi-aniline leather, and then the backs of the seats are carbon fiber, and then they've debossed the V logo into the back of the carbon fiber. It is a stunning touch, but not cheap. $6,090. And speaking of carbon fiber, there is 2 carbon fiber packages on offer. This one has the carbon fiber package 1, which is the spoiler and the air dam. But from what I'm finding out and talking again to many dealers, these carbon fiber packages, it's like near impossible to get, and they're holding up production because the supply chain has not been able to get the carbon fiber to the factory. So we're lucky to have it in this one. I'd say it's worth the $4,100. Then there's the performance data recorder. That is what's recording the footage you see of the road today. It's a great idea, but the only reason I don't like it, it's a 720p camera. Can we have this as 4K? It's 2022, especially for paying $1,600. Then the parking package is, of course, the rear camera, but then it's the ionizer for the HVAC system. That's an odd package, $710. Then the brake calipers. We can have them in a couple of different colors. This is fitted with bronze brake calipers, which I have to say do look pretty good, and that adds the bronze on the key. So what they do is they color code the key to the calipers. So if we had red calipers, we'd have a red key. While you and I are on the topic of brakes, I do feel it prudent to point out that carbon ceramic rotors are on offer with CT5V Blackwings for like 10 grand. This car is not fitted with them. And then while we're on the topic of options not on this specific car, the sunroof. Why is it not here, especially with an all black interior? You need to break up that darkness in there, and something tells me a panoramic roof would do it. It's like $1,400, and it would work well with that $6,000 package, because it's not just the carbon fiber and the semi-iron leather, it's the headliner that changes to the faux suede, they call it microfiber. And that brings us to the last item we have to pay extra for, which is the destination handling from the capital of the great state of Michigan, Lansing, for $995, which brings us to a total retail price of $98,710. So a couple of small details you and I need to discuss. First, there's some good and there's some bad to the tactile feel. Like, for example, the headliner has the micro suede, or like faux suede, whatever you want to call it, and it goes all the way down the A-pillar, which is a nice touch. But then you look at the door panels. Actually, it's worse than what's in the CT4V Blackwing. I don't understand why that's the case. Then there's some changes here we need to discuss, not so much for this vehicle, but in coming Cadillacs. I don't know when you guys are going to see this, but I had a conversation with the chief engineer of the Lyric. She is incredible, Jamie Brewer. She is kind of right in your face. I would have thought she's from New York, not Michigan. And one of the things she brought up was this needed to change. This works, but the problem is you see it in other GM cars. You see that same UX and some of the controls in like a Chevy Equinox, which, you know, when I'm spending $100 grand on something that's fast and special and limited and will be a collector's item, I don't want to share that with a Chevy Equinox. And it's funny, it took the chief engineer of their future electric car to kind of figure that out. Definitely check that episode when it comes out, because we talk about some other things that are going to be specific to Cadillac, and sadly it didn't make it in time for this kind of last hurrah. Okay, so what have the mutants within General Motors created for us here? Well, first, I can tell you what it ain't. It ain't an M5 competitor, and it certainly ain't an E63S competitor. Rather, this, a very focused track weapon, which brings us to the wish list. And here, I got nothing for the car itself, rather for General Motors. I get it. Brussels, Washington, twisting your arm to go down the EV path. And there are many benefits to EV. However, there isn't one solution to fix all problems in all regions of the world. So why arbitrarily put a bullet into engineering like this when in reality, this ain't a fast car, it ain't even a track car. Rather, this is a signpost to the rest of the world, car freaks like me and even non-car folks, that when GM puts their mind to something, they can do anything they want. So don't be so damn arbitrary with, we're only going EV, when there's a lot of life left here. And yeah, if you want, you could put in some electrification, make it more efficient, and have life beyond 2035, and have people paying through the nose for vehicles like this. Because in my research here, I have found that A, you can't find one, B, you can't really get them at MSRP, and C, these will most likely be collector's items, and we're talking instant classics because they're already going over market, and I don't think that is a supply chain virus thing. It's the scarcity of the vehicle and the type of vehicle it is and what it represents. So this is my long-winded way of saying, yes, I want one, and if I can find one, I will buy one, but let's change the strategy, or at least let's make it more flexible. Try to get the boat to the dock a little bit closer before you jump into the water of electrification and give us what the market wants. Get it? But of course, this is just one man's opinion, and the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I do want to leave you with a slight glimpse into the 24 hours leading up to me picking up this vehicle at LAX upon my return from the great state of Michigan. You see, before I left there, I had the very good fortune of sharing a couple of cigars with the one and only Robert A. Lutz, and we caught up on a lot of things. We haven't seen each other in about 3 years. Of course, we talked about this, the C8 he just picked up, as well as just life in general. And can I say, I've known the man for like 10, 11 years at this point, and I'm still learning from him. Until I see you in the next episode, bish, beta.